Hello. Again, Karl Singleton, a seat at the table, where our podcast is specifically geared towards ensuring that we ensure our residents and our greater audience, their needs are met with community resources, decision makers, and opportunities. Today, we definitely have a special show for you. I am joined by the one and only Miss Charlotte Plains, community advocate, my former before and after school teacher at the Marcus Garvey program that was located in Uptown Harrisburg at the top of the YMCA on 6th Street. As we all know, as we say, to whom much is given, much is required. And I cannot thank this young lady enough for thinking it not robbery to not only pour into our community and our young people historically, but continue to do so today. Her family shares her with us, with the state as a whole, whether that's dealing with reentry, whether that's dealing with PAL programs, et cetera, disproportionate minority contact. A lot of times when I was in as senior advisor in the mayor's office, and I was going back and forth to DC for My Brother's Keeper initiative, Ms. Peg is who I always leaned on to discuss the intricate details of disproportionate minority contact, school to prison pipeline, and other information that enhanced me. So not only did she have me from a second, third grader, because she started off when she was 14.
That's right.
But she also continues to groom me today. And I could not have thought of anyone else better to have as a co-host on such a historic day. Such a day of pride, such a day of importance than Martin Luther King Day of celebration, a day on, not a day off, than Miss Charlotte Plains. Before we bring our first guest on, Mr. Homer Floyd, and Miss Peg and I, we want to just, of course, highlight that we lost a great man in our community, Mr. Sylvester Wilson, husband of former councilwoman and community advocate Susan Brown Wilson, who are, of course, near and dear friends to both of us. So, Sly, you may be going physically here, never forgotten. Yes. Your spirit still lives within all of us who you've crossed paths with. So we are forever grateful for your presence here on earth that you spent with us. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce the co-host for today, Miss Charlotte Plains.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Harrisburg. Certainly want to echo the sentiments shared by Karl to the Wilson family and to all of the folks, community members amongst us who have lost those to COVID and other sicknesses and illness during this, even through this new year. But hopefully with all the things that are going on, we're getting ready to have a new president. We want to make sure that we encourage and empower folks to come out and do their part to uplift their community, empower their children, and let's turn this thing around. Every day is a new opportunity, and every day we should be striving to ensure that we are doing the best that we can for each other and for our community. So I thank you for allowing me. I think it's an honor and a privilege to be here with my mentee. I've known Karl since he was a little boy.
I still am inside all of this. He's still there.
and it's been a privilege. The Marcus Garvey program was one, as he said, I was 12 when I started working there. Um, but it was a program that we did. It was a before and after school program funded by the federal government. And we brought youth to the Y from around the community, from all sides of the city. And they got along. There wasn't fighting. There wasn't all this confusion amongst our kids. We taught them about their history, not the history when they landed on the Mayflower, but the history that is ours before we came to America. Um, and it gave them still, I think, a sense of pride, instilled in them the need to learn, go back and learn their history and not be caught in the mindset that they are less than. So hopefully through this conversation today, we will be able to tap into some of the other great minds and the work that's being done to empower our community. So thank you, Karl. I appreciate you thinking it not robbery to have me on here today, and let's get ready.
That's it. That's why she's here. Our first guest is none other than a civil rights icon, national civil rights icon that we all grown to love, admire, and respect. Who has worked tirelessly, whether individuals agree with him or not. He always, in his mind, in his thoughts, had the pulse of the community to do what was right, not what was convenient.
Mhm.
And you always know when you're doing the right thing because no one's really happy at that point.
Sure.
But policy, practices, and procedures are put in place. So we had the benefit of being able to touch Mr. Homer Floyd, who was for over 40 years the executive director for the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission.
Mhm.
But beyond that, a man who stood on the shoulders of giants, who represented them well, and to this day continues to serve not only the Commonwealth, but the nation at large. So, Mr. Floyd, I'm thankful that you have joined us today. What I'd just like for you to do, for those who may not know, if you could just, you're going to be here to pretty much set us off for this day of celebration, King Day of celebration. You are remarkable not only in terms of your work, but your perspective because you actually met Dr. King. You actually were able to have meetings with him to plan, to organize, to basically when you were out, at the university as a student, to be someone that he actually depended on for, thoughts, from that perspective. So thank you for being here with us. Um, if you would just please take a few minutes to highlight your fond memories, challenges that you've overcome, that you've partnered with other civil rights leaders historically, and where you currently find yourself today with regards to the civil rights movement and those that you entrust moving forward. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Karl, for inviting me, and I appreciate the time and attention you're giving to this issue on Martin Luther King Day. I There are several stages of activities that perhaps I would like to mention. Um, After I graduated from the Kansas University, I was able to get a job as a field rep in the state of Kansas, and it gave me an opportunity to listen to people and their problems and see to what extent we as an agency could deal with them. And this was on the tail end of the civil rights movement. Um, I was the executive director of the Kansas Commission on Civil Rights when I met Dr. King and some of his people. Uh, the In my job as a director of the Human Relations Commission there, I met with the president of Kansas State University, in which we were concerned about the absence of minority teachers, professors, the absence of minority students as well. And we had a meeting in my capacity as the director with the president and his uh, executive staff. And they promised, obviously, that they were going to do better, give more attention to the student activities and try to recruit more students and teachers. Um, that was in late in 1970. I'm sorry, 1967. Um, Later on that same year, I got a call from the president indicating that he was trying to follow through on some of the things that we were talking about, but that, and one of the things that he had done is invited Dr. King to come to the university, and they were going to set up a speakers deal in terms of trying to make it a big thing to have one large speech every year from any of the outstanding people at the time. Martin Luther King was invited. He had called me to come and meet with Dr. King at the university, and also um, uh, be able to support some of the efforts that they were making. Um, I, in meeting Dr. King, we told him about some of the problems that we were having in Kansas, and he promised to assist us. And one of the things that we were trying to do is uh, enforce our powers that were given the state to deal with discrimination, filing complaints, how to do it, what to do it. Dr. King um, was very much interested in the work that we were doing. He at this at the speech that he gave, he also indicated his support for a fair housing law for Kansas, and that's what we were working on. And he was very supportive of that. Um, we finally, in terms of the activities that he was going to support us on, he only 2 months after the speech that he gave, 2 months after that, his Dr. King was assassinated, and we um, and 2 years later, I left Kansas and came to the Human Relations Commission here in Pennsylvania. 40 years later, I get a call from the university's president indicating that they were uh, had they've named a street after Dr. King. They wanted to also put up some statutes in regard to what he had done, and that um, the the speech that he gave was before an audience of over 7,000. And so that was my major contact with Dr. King. Um, when I got the call 41 years after, and I was left Kansas and here in Pennsylvania, the reason that they called was that they had found that Dr. King was assassinated 2 months 2 months after that speech, and also they felt as though because he also um, the, he also had student support in this whole effort, and they wanted to um, make sure that they did some growth in regard to civil rights movement. Um, that speech that I was talking about, or that call 41 years ago, it was from the university because they had found in Dr. King's uh, breast, breast pocket a note in which it had my name on it and the others that was on the stage at that particular event that he had spoken to us. He pulled down the house, I'll tell you, and we simply had an outstanding day. But that was my contact, and they invited me back that 41
I,
years later to honor his memory, and they put up a statue and had already named a street after him. And so that was part of the effort that I was involved in when with Dr. King.
oh,
Uh,
okay. Well,
any questions you want to ask? Or
I've heard that story, and I just wanted to have that spoken at this juncture on this day, directly from you to the communities that we're reaching, so they individuals can know uh, that there's greatness that still lives among us, and that you should definitely have your flowers while you are yet still here to smell, see, and feel them. But Miss Peg has a. Now I'm going to go back and forth from Miss Peg to Miss Charlotte, but it's probably going to be Miss Peg more than it is, because that affectionately she is known to us in the community as Mom Peg, Miss Peg, Grandmom. So yeah.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Floyd.
hi there.
Happy MLK Day. Thank you for coming on.
Right.
Um, I'm bringing greetings from my brother, Michael Bowles. I'm sure you remember Mike. He was the executive director for the Harrisburg
For
Relations Commission.
many years, and his
27.
outstanding job too.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And I told him I would have the pleasure of being on with you this morning or this afternoon, and he wanted to make sure that I let you know to send you his greetings
Right.
and appreciation for all your work. The question I'd like to ask, though, Mr. Floyd, in all of the years of all the great work that has been done, recently we've seen where several of the county and the city human relation commissions have been disbanded. Can you speak to why you think that has happened and what we can do to bring those folks, bring those back up? Because certainly there's a need, if not um, as much now, if not more now than there was in the past. So can you speak to that for us for a few seconds or a few minutes, please?
My perspective on that is, to some extent, we've moved to a new era. Um, in the in the 60s and the 70s, the human relations commissions in local, state, and federal were all working toward getting enforcement powers to deal to so that when a housing complaint came up, they could file a complaint and have it investigated and so forth. Um, uh, the the time has passed, and many of the people that were involved in that effort are also gone now. You have new people moving into the Susquehanna Township area. You have people speaking out, but they're not doing it with the same gravity because the things that they're doing is not very visible, and we have to kind of refuel, but we're coming to a time in which um, the young people, particularly, are seeing their own set of problems and are beginning to um, identify them. Uh, and some don't necessarily believe that a local human relations commission is necessarily for them, is needed. Um, so we have to, I think, keep before us the need to have government involved in some branches of our activity, so that it keeps it legal, and it also um, get people who think that uh, the problems are still there. We just have to find them. Now, we're now moving into an era, though, in which there's a lot of confusion out there, as
Mhm.
evident by the president and the things that he has done to screw things up. Uh, we have now have issues that are out, um, issues that are very visible, and we're beginning to take to the streets again, and
Right.
that, I think, is a good thing in the sense of drawing attention to the way things are going, and our our young people are getting short shrift in all across the board. Into we're not getting enough money for our schools. They're not getting support because many of their parents, if they know who their parents are um, they're they're simply not getting the support. Uh, in many instances, our kids are growing up by themselves to some extent, and we see in the streets, Harrisburg has a high violence rate as it relates to the community, and we've got to reach out, but it's difficult when you're struggling yourself, trying to make a living. It's difficult to do some of the work that is needs to be done in the civil rights area. Uh, so we take it case by case, issue by issue, and but I think it's important for to give support to the creation of and continuation of human relations commissions because they're needed, and I support that.
Well, great. That's and I can't add anything. I can't ask for a better question to be asked. Um, at this point, I just like to again thank you, Mr. Floyd, for your willingness to come here with us today. Um, I'm grateful for you. The community at large, good, bad, or indifferent, over the years have seen human relations commissions, come and go. But from our perspective, as long as we still have a pulse on the needs, wants, and desires of our community, we can use the Human Relations Commission, and also call it out. When it's not doing what it needs to be doing with regards to the community as a whole. So we just thank you for being here today, taking the time, and I'm not gonna. Well, maybe I will put you on a hot seat. Maybe I can have you back for Black History Month so we can continue this dialogue and conversation if you don't mind.
We'll see if I'm available, and I will. I
All right,
will.
we'll meet your schedule. All right, I'll talk to you later. Really appreciate you. A seat at the table, co-hosted today by Karl Singleton and Miss Charlotte Plains, our illustrious guest, the icon, civil rights icon, Mr. Homer Floyd.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
How great was that? There you go. At this point, what we're going to do is transition to our male panel. for discussions. Mr. Floyd has obviously set the table,
Yes.
and we look to, as they say, continue this train down the track.
Yep.
So first, we like to bring on Dauphin County Judge Mr. Royce, the Honorable Mr. Royce Morris. Mr. Morris,
Good afternoon.
there you go. Thanks for being here with us.
Good afternoon, Judge.
Yes, definitely. Myself and Miss Charlotte Plains is here, and we're going to introduce the first African American elected to state office of State Auditor General, Mr. Tim DeFore.
Thank you, Karl, and hello, caller. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me this afternoon. I appreciate it. It's an honor.
Thanks for being here. Next brother we have is, low key as are the other two, but impactful beyond measure. The former president of the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, Mr. Brian Hudson.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello, Miss Charlotte. How are you?
Good afternoon, Brian. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Thanks for being here.
Yes.
The next gentleman, who is no stranger to many of us around this community, brother, as are the others of mine, Mr. Tariq Castile.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good
Then-
to hear you.
Of course, we have out of Pittsburgh, another developer, community advocate, works hard, brother of the Pennsylvania Diversity Coalition as well. And that brother is none other than Mr. Derek Tillman.
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Thanks for being
Thanks
here.
for being here.
Next, we have a total, and I won't say gun because that's taking a negative connotation a lot. But this young man, I had the great opportunity to meet him. Brilliant mind around diversity and inclusion and tracking and you name it, civil rights. He's a managing partner with ProRank Business Solutions, founder member of the Diversity Coalition as well. Mr. Kyron Robinson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Good
Definitely.
afternoon. Being here.
Yeah.
All right. And then we have another brother that's in the healthcare, doing a lot with supplier diversity, making sure equity with regards to inclusion, and also a member of the Pennsylvania Diversity Coalition, Mr. Ron Baldwin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
That's
Thanks for
indeed.
being here.
Last, definitely not least, this guy, I'm surprised we got him today. He does so much. He's from the great University of Virginia campus. Mr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day himself, leader of the Martin Luther King Leadership Development Institute. He always answers the calls when I dial, and he's even allowed to have me over as company when he's home alone.
Okay.
None other than Mr. Joseph Robinson.
Oh, Karl.
Now your wife knows. Your wife knows, man.
You're right.
We was hanging out.
Yeah, we were. Anytime. I'm just glad to see that there's another Mr. Robinson on the call, so that at least one Robinson has something good to say today. So thank you, Brother Robinson, for being here today, Mr. Karl.
Gentlemen, let me just start off. You were introduced in no particular order, but all of us have crossed paths, and we know today's theme is about Mr. Harmon Floyd, as you all saw, started off today, civil rights. And the reason why we stopped where we did was because he was alluding to the fact that the things that are going on right now today are of uttermost importance for the younger generation to understand, yes, but to also take a leadership role in. And so I know we all have had conversations around that. And so in sticking with our topic of the day, Two Americas, double entendre, we can talk from the perspective of living in two Americas as Black men. today in your professional roles. We can talk about living into America today with regards to understanding women and men living into America today with regards to race that we see on full display. So the floor is definitely open, no particular order. Based on your experiences within your profession, I'd just like to open it up for you guys to jump in and address the topic of living into Americas. And then Ms. Charlotte Plains, she'll have a series of questions, then I will. And if you're not speaking right now, if you can mute your phone, if you're going to speak, then you take them off mute, please. And then that'll help with the background noise.
Let me start since I'm was top in that list of folks. We'll just do it that way.
Who's going to argue the judge?
But first of all, I want to say it's an honor to be on the panel with these gentlemen, and I think it speaks to the topic that you have for today, Karl and Charla. I think it's appropriate for us to sort of have a sort of historical perspective on this. Homer Floyd talked about meeting Dr. King and him coming to the Kansas campus in 1967, and then his assassination in 1968. Well, interestingly enough, during that period of time, Dr. King was talking about one thing primarily, and that was the two Americas. And he called it the other America, and he gave a speech where he talked about these two different things that were going on in the country at the time. And he had a quote where he said, "You're on this lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity." And that's where he put the African American, or Negro at the time, as they were called. And he said that there was this triple ghetto: the ghetto of race, the ghetto of poverty, and the ghetto of human despair. And so we've come a long way from where he was back in 1967 and 1968, but we still find ourselves a lot of times in that same position. And so I think it's important that we have the folks on this panel that we have on the panel, because we need to sort of find out how we can move beyond that, triple ghetto that a lot of African Americans find themselves in, through employment, education, through healthcare, through all those things. But I think before we can even get there, we have to take a look at the reality, the history, the truth of what brought us there. And I think that's what's been so hard for white America to do. When we talk about what a lynching looked like, what a lynching looked like in the 1930s was a picnic. White folks around a picnic table eating while a black man's flesh was burning as he was hung, castrated, and they chopped up pieces of his body and sold them as souvenirs. That is a traumatic, harsh, right in your face reality. And that is what our forefathers had to live through, and that's what they had to experience. So there were kids that are now grandparents that were around that picnic table. And so we have to get people to see the reality of where we came from so they can get beyond the things that keep us from being able to move forward and really address the issues of race. White folks are afraid of it. They don't want to talk about the history of it, but the history of it is what we need to get beyond so that we can stop having incidents like we had a week ago, where people don't see that the angry white mob is not it's not a new thing. It's an old thing, just reclaimed for a new period of time. So we have to get beyond that. And before I go and turn it over to the folks who may be able to tell us how we can move forward, I recommend a good book for everyone. It's Joy DeGrue's Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And I encourage white folks to read it, because it allows you to see what the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow and just torture of the black body has done to the psyche of not only the African American population, but to the white population that fails to acknowledge what kind of trauma, untreated trauma, that has created and what effect that has on our communities today. So thank you.
uh, great, great points. Before one of the things, since you're bringing up that piece about the strange fruit, in essence, hanging from the tree. Um, there'll be some who don't have the cultural competence and or understand, especially in your position that you're in, that will wonder, okay, we're talking about white people hanging black people, but what about black on black crime? And I'm always one to fire back with that one by quite simply saying the reason a lot of times that you don't see the marching in the outpour in black communities when there's black on black crime to the degree that it makes national news that they call rioting and other people protest is because there's several elements that are missing. When there is black on black quote unquote crime, there's just as much white on white crime and black on black crime, truthfully. But when we're talking about black on black crime, there's certain elements that are present that are not present when there's white on black crime that we've seen. And that is individuals are the perpetrator, the murderer is arrested, he or she is jailed, he or she is tried, he or she is sentenced. And from my perspective, and I'm speaking for me, the reason why that is because when that's a white officer or whomever, there is very seldomly is the officer arrested, very seldomly arrested immediately. Very seldomly is that officer brought to trial. Very seldomly is that officer convicted. And so that again highlights the double entendre of two Americas. So if someone else would like to jump in on that, the floor is open. And in particular, I would love to hear from Mr. Robinson on that one. The youngest Mr. Robinson, that's Joe Robinson, that is.
Let me just say thank you to you and Charla for this panel today. This is just fantastic, and thanks for letting me be a part of it. As has already been said, such a great lineup of men, most of whom I know, and those I don't know, I need to get to know, Mr. Robinson in particular. But listen, this is we are living in a time when I'm excited. I want to piggyback on something Homer may have said, Karl. This may be deviate from what you wanted me to say, but I want to piggyback on something that Homer Floyd said about the movement today and the young people and they're out. And I commend them for that. In fact, I just commented on that today in an article. But I commend them for their vitality, their persistence. I commend them for that. But I would encourage them to go back and revisit, and that's all of us. Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, and I know Royce gave us a great book as a point of reference. But this is an older document, obviously the letter from Birmingham jail that Dr. King penned, but it's a seminal document that really lays out Dr. King's philosophy about nonviolence and the march. In this letter, he responds to some religious critics who question his motives for being there in Birmingham on behalf of civil rights. And he lays out such a wonderful case for civil rights and for protests, but he also lays out 4 basic steps in any protests and that they employed. And I would submit that the young people today, with all of their energy, would do well to go back and read this letter and understand truly how protest marches were able to succeed in King's Day. And the 4 steps are very basic, if I might just enumerate them right now. Number 1 is make sure you've properly identified the issue, the grievance, if you will. Dr. Charles Kettering used to say that a problem well stated is a problem half solved. And so make sure you understand what the issue is. And then who is the antagonist? In other words, who are we to seek redress from? You need to be clear on that. You don't want to just, draw a crowd and talk loud, but you want to be strategic. And then thirdly, you want to negotiate. secondly, you want to negotiate. So not only do you want to understand the issue and who the antagonist is, but number two, you want to seek to negotiate. Now that we know who our target audience is, let's negotiate with them, lay our grievances out there, and seek some redress. If that fails, then it's time to move ultimately to public protests, civil disobedience. But even before doing that, Dr. King inserted a third step, which is self-purification, where he says you have to examine yourself and say, are we prepared to go the long haul here on this struggle? Am I prepared to endure a slight or a slander or maybe even a blow to the head? Am I prepared to go to jail for what I believe in? And that's what Dr. King insisted you need to go through, that purity process where you begin to do your self-purification, and then fourthly, to literally go out and protest. And what is the purpose of the protest? The purpose of the protest is to create enough tension that antagonist who refused to hear you previously is forced back to the table. And that was the formula that Dr. King and the others used in the civil rights movement. And so I'm advocating and suggesting that we need to go back and teach our young millennials, our next generation, etc. Teach them these concepts so that the advocacy that they're doing, and Lord knows we need them because they have the energy and the strength, enthusiasm, and the stake to get it done. But we need to help them do this strategically. We who know better have to reach back now. And so I always harken back to that letter from Birmingham jail. And if anyone hasn't read it in a while, I advocate you ought to read at least once a year, that letter. It's 5 pages long, takes you about 30 minutes, but it's something you really need to read and really inculcate into your own personal philosophy. So that's my opening comment, Karl. I hope I didn't deviate too far from what you wanted me to talk about.
All right. So what we like now, Ms. Beck?
Okay. So thank you, everybody, for being here again and having this wonderful conversation. Certainly, when we're looking at the recent protests that our young people are doing in the streets, we realize, even going back to the beginning of SNCC days, that it was the college students and the young people who decided that enough was enough and they took to the streets. Certainly, I think that's what we've seen. I always say and have been saying since 2020. 2020 was the year that ushered in a clear vision, and we're now seeing with our eyes what we refuse to hear with our ears. So let's talk about now, the importance of us gathering the strength and taking to the streets and going back to the years when folks were marching, and the importance of the marches and the importance of having people stand up and, not ride the bus. Looking at the videos, certainly our young folks are seeing what's been going on in the communities, even though they've, some of them had experienced it themselves, they're now seeing it and they're revolting against it. So in the spirit of Dr. King and his second phase of his life, when he decided that, marching was great, but we also have to pray and move our feet.
That economic power.
Right, that economic power. How we can speak to what's next and what we need to do moving forward. So
Not a problem if everybody can hear me. And again, thanks for having me on today. It's truly an honor to be part of this panel. And I would like to say that first of all, I think the To America aspect is very, very significant. I think Dr. King understood it and utilized it brilliantly. And where I think the two Americas meet, right? Where the two Americas meet at a time like this is the protest, is the march. It seems like there was this dichotomy that Dr. King had spoke to when he was saying that where are all of the folks that were with us marching in Birmingham? When we started marching in Chicago, I didn't see them. Where were they? And what he had identified was something that was very, very significant, was that there were a lot of folks out there that were marching because, and I think that this is significant now, they were marching because they were outraged at the blatant brutality and inhumane treatment of our people, of Black people, right? But that is not the same as marching because you want to see the true advancement of those people. And what happens is whenever we have these types of situations in history, the two Americas are both angry at America for how they're treating Black people, but it's for different reasons. It's for those two reasons. You know, we're angry because we want to see this advancement and how they're treating us, and then we have folks that have never been listening, just because they've been treating us so inhumane, so brutal, that they're out there shoulder by shoulder marching with us, right? But he didn't mix those two. He didn't confuse those two. And what he did was he encapsulated that energy to go after the economic reform for our people, right? And if you and I'm because of what I do, I'm a big advocate, and I would encourage all of the young people, go back and listen to every single one of his speeches yourself. A lot of times we listen to other people's interpretation of what these speeches meant or what he was saying. Listen yourself. What that brother was doing, he was laying out the path for reparations. He was laying it out very clear in a manner to which they couldn't argue with. And he was bringing everybody with us to help make our argument for us. And what he was able to do was encapsulate the energy of those that were just mad at the brutality, at the inhumane treatment, who might not have actually wanted to see us get reparations, right? But he brilliantly was able to bring them along with us. So the next leader, the next resource that's going to help us for one, I believe, to get straight to the answer, it was an institution that got us into this situation. It's going to have to be an institution that gets us out of it. And it's going to be an institution that's able to capitalize on that energy, the brutality, that might not want to see us advance economically, but can agree that our treatment is inhumane and it's brutal. And then what we do is we encapsulate all of that to make the legal arguments, to make the economic arguments to get this piece of the pie, you know, to lift ourselves up, but then to also hold the institutions and the government accountable as well. So developing the systems to do that and the networks, such as the individuals that are on this call are they're paramount. Hopefully that was long enough to get Mr. Hudson connected and back on.
Well, yes, it was. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Can you hear me?
Brian, you still with us? I'm understanding that people in the audience could hear you. It was just something that we couldn't. So we'd like for you to again come back up and speak to the economic opportunity.
So from my perspective, I've always been a believer of wealth building for many years, and I agree with everything everyone has said so far. We as Blacks hadn't had access to capital, and for me that has been number one. Mm-hmm. And educating our folks. When Dr. Floyd talked about the young folks out there today protesting, I add to that education. Education has always been big for me. And I'll give an example of how we have always been taken advantage of. And more recently, up in Monroe County, the Poconos, a builder and a developer colluded to defraud home buyers in the Poconos area, saying, come buy your dream home in the Poconos. Did not tell them about escrowing for taxes, did not tell them about the down payment, the appraisals. And most of these folks were minorities coming from New York. So they all went into foreclosure, and a great deal of them lost their home. I spent a lot of time talking to them. So from that, we started educating not just minorities, but everyone about how to buy a home. What does that mean? What's responsible for that? You move that down to the road. I like to start in the elementary schools about educating to build wealth. Then we got to get that access to capital, which means the protests help bring that about. Protesting individuals that are not being socially responsible. And this is where the active and don't let up. This is where the active protests come through. What type of loans have you made to minorities? Where's your business at? You're in our community. We're spending our dollars. We should have some representation. You fast forward that today, and you talk about board seats, getting seats on those boards that are making these decisions. Developers to have access to capital to build projects. You cannot build a pipeline if you don't have access to capital. And that's been known for years. And quite truthfully, we've been locked out of that market. So my goal has been to push that for African Americans, for Black people, for minorities, to make sure that, number one, we have some great ideas, and that's always taken from us and gone a different way. Or if we don't have the capital, we find someone who does, and they're taking a lot of our profits. And I want that to stop, and I want that to change. And it's slowly coming about, but we have a long way to go there. And that's where I think this economic push needs to be made to make sure that we have access, we can build wealth, and we can make a difference. And for me, that's where I spend a lot of my times. And for those who are at the top of these decision-making organizations, you have a responsibility to give back to the community, to make sure that those are being treated fairly. Make sure that your guidelines reflect that we want diversity. When you talk about jobs, that's in the same ballpark. That provides jobs to our folks, our African Americans, Black people. We got to have these access to these jobs and these capitals, and those two go hand in hand. So I'm a firm believer of that, and that's exactly what we got to do going forward. And right now, I think there's more of an opportunity than ever. As Charlotte mentioned, we have a new president coming in. I think will be different opportunities. I'm working with some of our Black Caucus members in DC to make sure that we get this access. Many of you heard about the PPE loans. How much did we get of that? Not enough, is my feeling. We should have an opportunity to tap into that source, just like others have. I know you heard the stories of companies getting $10, $15 million and they don't even need it. Now, we got business here that are struggling to stay afloat, and $100,000 loan for them, which turns into a grant, by the way, which is the cheapest money, goes a long way to providing jobs for those in the Black community. So there's, at the same time, we got a long way to go. There's even more of an opportunity now to make that happen in the climate that's coming ahead. And don't let up. Don't get apathetic. Don't get complacent. Well, I got mine, and I'm not worried about anyone else. That cannot be the statement. We all have to stick together. And this is where that unity comes into place that Mr. Floyd mentioned. We have to stick together to make this happen. But that's, from my perspective, that's how I feel about this.
And that's why Brian Hudson was a member of my transition team.
Thank you.
One that hated my transition team.
Yeah, that's right. Hey,
Brian, I think you're up, Derek.
Sure. So as I think about the thing Brian just mentioned, as I reflect on the life of Dr. King, what he fought for, things like civil rights, humanity, justice, education, and then toward the latter part of his life, he moved to the economic agenda. Although we were able to get the rights to eat in certain places, he once said that, what good is it to be able to eat here if you can't afford the hamburger? So I've really centered my work and my calling on picking up that mantle and doing my part. I think we all have a role to play. Some on the front lines protesting, some doing this, some doing that. Me specifically, it's really furthering that economic agenda. So let me just touch on the two Americas piece, because as Brian alluded to, access to capital, as a developer, as a Black developer, we still have challenges, receiving and acquiring the access to capital that we need to really go to the next level, despite the massive success that we've had. And when it was really brought to light when I was introduced to a white developer who had only done a duplex, rehabbed a duplex in a 3-unit, and instantly had $1 billion at his disposal. $1 billion firm backed him. We had did over 100 units. We had did a new construction project, 36 units, etc. But still in this two Americas, challenge, this ongoing problem. However, we remain resilient. We remain focused. Things are still moving forward. And as I think about this, you know, I feel like it's my responsibility that as we get these opportunities to rebuild our communities, is to further that, to create opportunities for others. That the economic power, that the economic mobility, it does not end with myself, but that it continues to create opportunities for other minority companies, as it also really is to show somebody else the way. So I really take personal responsibility for that, and I think that's the mindset that we have to have going forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. And that really is a great segue into the next part. Speaking of to America, I'd like to bring Tariq Steele in. But before I do that, I'd also like to do a definite shout out to Brian Hudson in terms of the work with PHFA and the Pennsylvania Reentry Council, which I am the coordinator for. It enabled us to give developers an opportunity and ensure that they were affording reentrants good housing. And I know I can't hear you, Brian, but there were those who were like shouting out, yeah, yeah, that's right on, brother, the whole 9 yards. So I want to, speaking about the opportunity, second chances, and the other part of America, Mr. Steele, if you can, come on in and let's hear from you.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's definitely a good conversation. Um, I definitely had the opportunity to meet everyone on this panel before. Met with Derek Tillman out in Pittsburgh when he had his ribbon cutting, or had his ribbon cutting for his project and his 36 units out in Pittsburgh. And I love what he did out there, as well as the stuff that I've done myself in Harrisburg. But I had met with Derek in Pittsburgh, and I love what he's done and accomplished. I mean, not even giving myself the credit for what I've done, and I didn't realize what I've done. I just was doing what I thought was needed in our own community, trying to put some affordable housing, put people to work on contracts that I was acquiring in the city, whether they was private or government contracts. But I also believe in education by training the ex-offenders, giving them a second chance in a field of vocational carpentry, what I have stewardship program in doing. I've been doing carpentry work since I was in ninth grade. I went to Votech, but since our Votech was shut down, I thought it was my duty, if I ever had the opportunity, to show people how what I've learned over the years and what I've learned, you know, hands-on training and theory training. And we have so many aspects of construction that we do. I'm not the best at it all, but I know what I know. But I know other people that are experts in their field. But what I try to do is get us all to work together and to teach the younger guys in the community how this works and how we can build our own capacity. Because it's a lot of people always blame the young youth for what they're doing out here in the community, but none of them willing to give a hand. I mean, if someone gave me a hand, and I'm a firm believer. If someone gives you a hand, it's your duty to give both your hands to the next man, and everyone should do that, do the same. I mean, we have a lot of professionals on this call, on this Zoom, but a lot of them is in everybody's in different fields, and I believe if everyone reach back and help one another, I believe we have a better community. Brian Hudson, I always give him the shout outs because he helped me out a lot, especially into this development game. And not only just that, just business, just his business mind, period, and just everything that he stands for. I firmly believe in, and I started, taking a strong interest in trying to help others because he helped me. And by him helping me, he helped everyone else, because what I'm doing is I'm helping a lot of ex-offenders get into the construction game as far as commercial, because a lot of times we out doing houses, but it's some money in that. But our main focus should be on these commercial projects, because that's where the real money is. And a lot of times when I started in this commercial, doing it for myself as an entrepreneur, it's rough as far as the access to capital, and that's real, because I remember when I first started out, uh, I was doing some nice projects, doing some subcontracting from a lot of larger firms, but I didn't have access to the capital. I knew I could do the work, but I was doing all the work for these big companies, but they were the one making the money because they had the bonding. Um, far as far as my company goes, and a lot of other minority companies that I know of, a lot of us don't have access to that capital or that bonding, because we were doing all the work but was getting little pay. I was making what you call hood money, money that was just good enough, but they was making millions of dollars, and I was on a lot of multi-million-dollar projects, and I was doing the work, but they were making the money. They were putting up all the bonds for me because they knew I could do the work. But the end of the day is that's where I would like to see uh, us working together to build that wealth, where we can work together and get the bond and get the access to the capital, because we can grow as a team. As far as being an individual, it's hard to grow your business when you're working by yourself. You need a team on all aspects of all this stuff. I believe you need a team. And one thing that I did learn over the years, just being around good people, is it took me years to grow my business because I wasn't around the right people. And when I got around the right people, as far as uh, joining the coalition, where Karl headed up the coalition, where most of the members on this call is part of the coalition, and we, as African Americans, started working together. That's when our business really started taking off, because a lot of times um, we don't trust one another. That's what it is. It's the trust factor, where a lot of us have issues with trusting one another, or they worrying about what the next man's making. And that's where we get stuck at all the time, because no other race or culture even go through a lot of the stuff that we go through. We tear each other down where we should be building each other up. And I know back in Dr. King's day, a lot of these African American businesses were thriving because a lot of them they were together back then. I don't know what happened, but we just not where I
Yeah,
believe we should be because of failure to work together. Uh,
agreed. Agreed. No, you nailed it. Shameless
Absolutely.
plug. Shout out to the Pennsylvania Diversity Coalition, thepadc.org, thepadc.org. Since we're all on here, um, great plug. One day I'll get to meet you, Mr. Castile. Hopefully cross paths. Uh, but in all seriousness, I like to bring in Ron Baldwin. Ron is dealing with supplier and diversity and the importance. So we're moving right along. Not only supplier and diversity, but in the healthcare field. And Ron brings a different perspective that has to be mentioned, especially in the age of COVID, especially in the age of additional opportunities being made available through supplier diversity within large corporations, and that is economic wealth building as well, especially for our businesses. And so, Ron Baldwin, without any further ado, brother, come on and join the conversation.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl. Great discussion. Great discussion. The way I look at this whole process with the two Americas, likewise, it's the same in corporate America. So what my job is to do is to make sure that those folks who make decisions about what the impact will be in terms of under-resourced communities, I'll try to make sure that they can have a complete understanding. Because what you realize is that oftentimes folks in the C-suite are making decisions about people's lives that they don't interact with. So my opinion is that you can't really make a really good decision if you're not having conversations or interacting with the folks that's going to be impacted from the decisions. So just like the brother said earlier, Brother Robinson, has got to be self-purification. So to a degree, that's what I'm doing with the management team, coming back and really having these deep discussions about how you impact diverse communities, utilizing the same process you use to impact those majority folks that you talk to all the time, which really starts with conversations. Once you get to have a conversation, you get to know people. So what I've done to do that is, created a mentor program where they mentor African Americans to have conversations. And once they have these deeper conversations, they have to realize that there's no difference. So once you realize that there's no difference, we can start to really put together some initiatives to move these processes forward. And that's what we're doing. So now we've created an entrepreneur training program for our members who live in the communities. And the big thing is social determinants of health. So what we try to do is tie what's important to the business to the diverse suppliers. Every diverse supplier that's on this call impacts social determinants of health. They're creating livable wages for people. They're creating access to transportation, access to health, access to a number of things to help build healthier communities. So once people really understand their value beyond the actual economic impact, but there's another impact as well in terms of what you do to build these strong communities. So what I try to do, I'm a connector. I'm connected with the Diversity Council, which has been a great group. They can say things that I can't say. But at the end of the day, my job is to educate and make sure that those senior management team understand the true value of diversity. And it's a journey. I mean, it wasn't easy, but we've come a long way, and there's a long way to go. But this game is a collective game. We're all in this together. Everybody plays a part. And the thing is to know when is your time to get in the game, when we play together, when we play individually. But we all play a role in building strong communities. And one of the bigger things I think that we had to understand as a business to communicate is that how you define communities, is important. So you hear underserved. Underserved is a negative connotation. That underserved, what is underserved? We're under-resourced for a reason because of historical racism and inequity. But as soon as you can swallow that lemon, then I can add a little bit of sugar in terms of how we add and advance these opportunities with diverse suppliers. Then it becomes lemonade and it's more palatable. But it's a challenge, but it's a struggle every day that we'd have to be collectively engaged to move this process forward, to make sure that we have not just an impact, but a sustainable impact that's transferable, and we're building economic wealth and allowing these suppliers to compete at a much higher level. So that's what we do in a nutshell. But thanks to the PA Diversity Coalition, all the brothers on the call, we will continue to advance these initiatives together with some fruit and some fruitful outcomes. So I'm thankful that you guys are here. I'm thankful for the conversation. It is a true blessing.
Karl, may I jump in and just share one quick comment?
Oh, sure.
All right, sir. Just following up on what the brother just said and what was said about these two Americas. Dr. King talked about this. I think someone alluded to that earlier, either Homer or maybe that was Brian or Royce. Maybe they talked about the two Americas. But he says whenever America allocates a prize economic opportunity for white people, they call it a subsidy. And when they do it for poor people, it's called welfare. So he said the problem is that we have socialism for the rich and rugged free enterprise capitalism for the poor.
Heavy.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Heavy.
That was Dr. King.
That doesn't sound like and we all just get along. Don't show me this. I always say, don't show me the Dr. King or Nelson Mandela.
That's right.
In a later year, show me the Nelson Mandela they locked up. I want to see him.
That's right.
Don't tell me that about I
When
have
he
a
got
dream.
That warrior, that fire in his belly.
Not that I have a dream speech. Tell me about the promissory note. Talk to me about that. So in a Birmingham jail cell.
That's right. Yeah. Don't judge me by the color of my skin, by the content of my character. They love to quote that one, But they ignore this one about the socialism and the free market enterprise for the poor versus rich.
Sure.
Yay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Appreciate that. Would you say if they're not going to offer you a seat at the table, then bring your folding chair and pull it up, right?
Or you get a comfortable one. I'm just saying. I mean, look what you plush. Shout out to plus
I'm
shameless
talking
plug.
about those tables
Oh,
that we're not invited to.
and that's why we're creating our own.
That's right.
And the other
And
side.
we have to make sure that we infiltrate those rooms and bring our folding chairs with us. So
That's right.
if we don't have a chair for whatever
right.
reason, we bring our chair and sit up to the table.
Chances are
Because we cannot continue to allow folks to create strategies and plans for folks who are not at the table.
Remember we was in that one meeting, and I won't even mention it. But I was Gary go in, and he was like, "Shut up! You better not. You better just."
When he was doing the angry black man thing?
That would be the one.
That's okay.
I think it was a CJAB meeting, Criminal Justice Advisory Board meeting, and he was like, "You better not say nothing else. Sit down."
Right. That's
But
okay.
I listened. I sat down, and I'm still here.
I mean, listen, and things that happen, right? Okay.
All right, you got it.
So next, we'd like to bring in the honorable, recently elected great brother, Timothy DeFore.
That sounds like coming to the stage. Yeah, is he funny?
Right.
You know, how do I follow up with what everybody else has said?
Talk about the control of throughout the state and how we can get at that.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I was listening to Tyreek and to Derek, listening to some of their concerns with regards to actually having an opportunity for businesses to do the same thing everybody else has been doing. And but first, before I get into that, because I have a few comments about that, I want to give another shout out to Homer Floyd. You know, I was so blessed in my life to be around him a lot because his family lived in the same neighborhood that my family that I grew up in, and I would see him all the time. And as a youngster, he was inspiring, and he was one of the persons that I always looked up to. I still look up to Homer Floyd. So my world and this world is a better place because of the Homer Floyds in the world. So God bless him. And thank you for having me on the show and be part of this panel. You know, one of the things about being an elected official, first in the county level and now in the statewide level, my job is to be the checks and balances. And the way I see it is to make sure that there is a level playing field, to make sure that everybody has the same tools, and to make sure that they're able to use those same tools and have a fair opportunity to have businesses in the same opportunity to do business with government. And you know, as I was campaigning for Auditor General, I was hearing the same stories from Erie to Philadelphia, and that was that we people of color were not getting that same opportunity. And my question is why? And now the role that I'm going into as Auditor General, I can go out and find out why. Because we are living in two Americas. We really are. And I you know, growing up, I never thought that in 2021 that the world would be like it is today. And that's why in my career fields, I've always chosen careers where I've always followed the money, whether it's with the Inspector General's office, Attorney General's office, Controller, Auditor General, because I always wanted to make sure that everybody had a level playing field. My parents struggled. Their grandparents struggled because they weren't given fair opportunity. And now I'm in a position, and it's odd that the day after we celebrate the life of Martin Luther King Jr., I'm sworn in as the first person of color, African American in the history of the state to be elected as a royal officer. And I take it as it's my responsibility to reach back and to help others and to be a role model to those kids who are out there not knowing who they want to be, but also guiding them. So not only do I do my job the way it's supposed to be, provide the information to the public, and as you can see over my shoulder, you see something sign that says financial literacy. That's my second passion, because I believe that by teaching financial literacy, a lot of that economic gap that we see, it's going to start closing up just a little bit. To the life of me, I never understood why financial literacy was never taught in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Why it was not mandatory. Every state, and this is what gets me angry. Every state surrounding Pennsylvania, it's mandatory that financial literacy be taught from kindergarten through 12th grade. Not in Pennsylvania.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
Yep.
not
Yep.
in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
So that's why my plan is to work with Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill, even though it's not technically part of the job as the Auditor General, but I'm going to make it one of my passions and make it one of the things that I look at as being my duty and responsibility to all those who come before me and all those who are going to hopefully take my place once my time is up.
It does make a difference, Tim.
Yes,
Very good.
absolutely.
Thank you very much for that well-rounded discussion. Is it? Okay. So thank you very much, Tim and other gentlemen. What we're going to do now is we're going to open up the phone lines for you to call in with your questions. 717-903-8760. Once again, 717-903-8760. Before we go there, another plug. Family member Tamia Singleton, a licensed masseuse, therapist, 845 Sir Thomas Court, Suite B1, Harrisburg. Phone number 717-364-0175. Of course, as always, Music Man, Conrad, Chad over at the District Bar and Lounge. Of course, the Lewis Brothers overall, Music Man Entertainment, Conrad and Craig, all these C's, and then I'll come in with the K. So again, what we like to do is continue to use this platform to ensure we circulate that dollar, empower that economic development, and ensure that we reach out to decision makers and those with the skills and knowledge, like those on this call, but not limited to those on this call. We have a net, they have a net, and then we all can be encapsulated for the right reasons as we go forward. As we continue, we will also touch on real estate in one of the upcoming podcasts and the importance of not only moving out and allowing our communities to be gentrified, but buying the block, buying the communities, buying the neighborhoods, buying the city from the perspective of real estate, investment, development. And so I am going to ask, of course, Brian Hudson and Tark Castile, Derek Tillman, and you'll hear from a fiery sister on the sisters panel, Marimba Malayans out of Pittsburgh. We'll have her on the next panel. So we're going to lean on those individuals, that skill set, to hopefully come back as we engage around the topic of economic empowerment via real estate. So I see you out there, Brother Washington, Stanley Washington, my man. We definitely, we clearly understand the benefits of that. We'll also be bringing in various banks, Mid-Penn Bank, Orrstown Bank, Community First Fund, PNC, various others that the Pennsylvania Diversity Coalition has reached out to, connected with, and quite clearly discuss how we need to make sure we have mutually beneficial relationships with these lending institutions. So we're going to circle back with that as well. At this time, again, we're going to open up the phone lines, 717-903-8760. But first, we're going to go to the lovely Miss Peg. She has a question.
Yes, thank you, panel. I just want to reiterate for the conversation. We're throwing readings out there, books out there that we probably need to study, and I want to put up critical race theory. Critical race theory kind of will explain all of the pieces, all of the tenets that we're talking about, and how it's used in education and the criminal justice system and employment and all the areas, public health. And once you understand that what we're dealing with is by design, then it will not be something that is foreign, and you'll say, okay, well, now that I have the background and I have the history and I understand why things are the way they are, we can redirect and use some of the information and some of the opportunities that have been afforded to us through this panel. So the question that I'm going to bring forth is from online, and it says, as a business owner, how can we continue to have access to the resources and the knowledge of the people on this panel? And that's for anybody that wants to go. Take it.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me, Charlotte, but I'm going to chime in here to
That's not for
members
me.
of the
Okay.
That's not
audience.
I mean, you really come through the Pennsylvania Diversity Coalition.
Mr.
That's
Hudson's
what I was
speaking.
going to say.
Mr.
Carl.
Hudson's speaking. He's answering. You can't hear him, but Mr. Hudson's answering that
Mr.
question.
Hudson was speaking, yes.
Sorry.
Give him
all right.
about 2 minutes there.
Yeah, you're clear.
I was going to exactly say just that. I mean, first of all, for those in the audience, become a member of Diversity Coalition. United, we have more strength together. These same individuals are members of that organization, and we're all trying to help each other. So that would be the first step. And then I would say educate yourself about the resources that are out there that may be available to you. That means going online, talking to, the politicians. How can they help you? So that would be, I would say, the first steps. Networking is key. I've always felt that we as Black people did not do enough of that. So we should do more of that. And now we have an organization that brings all of us together. We should take full advantage of that. Thank you.
Mr. Hudson has eloquently answered the question. So, Mr. Singleton, we'll throw it back to you.
All right.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back. I did hear networking. I think I got something figured out here now. So I'll take full responsibility for the technical difficulties. But we're here now. So you have another question come up or no? Okay. So once again, 717-903-8760. Is there someone else, Mr. Judge Morris, or anyone else? Right now, we're going to do a little round robin, opening it up for everyone. And
Well, I would just follow up and say that education is the key. I see you put some books out there on your counter there, and I think a lot of times we expect the public education system to provide our kids with the knowledge that they need to survive as Black children in America. And clearly, the public education system doesn't do that. And so we need to encourage our young people. I remember growing up, we had Ebony and Jet magazine, and Ebony put out a Black history collection, and they had a Black encyclopedia, and you had the intentional things outside of your public education that provided you with the knowledge that you needed about your people, yourself, your heritage, and obviously my wife, she went to the Children of Africa School, much like Marcus Garvey. There were institutions that were set up to teach our children who they are, and we're missing a lot of that now. And just the whole idea of being self-determined is created out of that knowledge of self. Tar can be a great businessman, but if he didn't know who he was, he could get drowned in the sea of that, corporate America. But he knows who he is because he had the knowledge and education about self. And I think we're missing that with some of our young people. And so we need to sort of, these books that we talk about, we need to encourage them being read in our households with our children. I know I did it with my sons, and I think they're better for it because unless you know who you are, you're going to be in a lot of trouble in this world.
definitely. Do you have something?
Yeah.
Oh, couldn't agree more.
I'd like to add on to that.
Certainly.
All right. To both what both just said, Brian and Royce. Brian encouraged you to get involved with the Diversity Coalition, and he's right. If you think about it, sometimes we say, man, those white folks, they all know each other. They all just interact with each other. Well, that's because they all go to the Lions Club meeting. They go to the what's the one you have at the Hilton every Monday?
Rotary.
They go to the Rotary Club meeting, and that's how they meet. That's how they meet each other. And so what Brian has laid out is that we now have an organization where those of you who have these entrepreneur instincts, there's a group that you can affiliate with where you'll get to meet those people. And you won't have to say, how do I get in touch with Brian Hudson? You just look across the room. And so that's important. And then secondly, my mother, God rest her soul, she used to tell us, she used to say, and this is long before internet, she'd say, there's no excuse for not knowing anything when you can read a book. And that's what she drilled in our heads, you know.
Yeah, and another thing, and even though all of us are all leaders in our own perspective areas, we all rely on each other. Because I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm successful because of what I've done. No, I'm successful because of people on this panel, and Karl, this Royce, Joe, Brian. At one time, I've called each of you, where I needed to talk to somebody. So not only do we understand that we are community leaders, but we also rely on each other, and
right.
there's strength in numbers.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Can I chime in really quick too? What I like to do is give perspective, because I keep hearing education and networking, and one of the things that our company does is try to create systems for our people to help encourage the education, to help encourage the networking. So what we've done, and the coalition is one of the first proponents and users of this. If you're a member of the Diversity Coalition, then you have access to this system. And the system is called ProRank Academy. At the core, the system is a learning management system that we control, that we have the narrative, that we can have that historical information in this system for our next generation. One of the things that my generation had to do was try to figure it out again, when it was already out there. So what we're doing now is we're compiling all of the information and we're putting it in one spot. And we're starting to build it out into different topics and subject matters so that the next generation coming behind us can kind of have it laid out for them, spelled out for them. The next thing that this system does is it facilitates networking, right? And in the 21st century sense, because, with the whole COVID impact, we might never have 100 people in a room shoulder to shoulder like this again, right? And then also before COVID, how were the kids, when you saw the kids in the next generation, they have their face in the phone the whole time, right? So whatever we're trying to reach out to them with, it better be on that screen, right? So because that is the language that they speak. That's what they're doing now. So what this does is it allows them to give that familiarity where everybody has their own profile. Their profile has an avatar. The point of this site is to not only encourage education, but to create networking around business development. Right, and around our business development, right? We don't discourage any businesses, but specifically, this is a system that's for us, by us, to lift us up. And like I said earlier, it was an institution that got us in this. We're going to need an institution to get us out, right? And if we all come into this ecosystem, right, and everybody starts to get independent and look inward, what can we do individually, play our own parts, and all come together and unite in this ecosystem? Then we can all share the collective economic opportunities that we have, the educational opportunities that we have, the community development opportunities that we have. So I would encourage you all to join the PADC, and please check out ProRank Academy. That's at prorankacademy.com or learn.prorankllc.com. And it's really easy. If you see this little icon here, if you hold your phone up over this, your camera, then it'll take you to our website. And the first thing you'll see is a banner for ProRank Academy, learn more. Also, if you go to PADC, you join as a member of PADC, you're going to get a heightened access. You're going to get a higher level of access to ProRank Academy that will unlock a lot of those trainings that we just discussed. And we're adding more trainings and more resources every day. And that's also a way that you can get in touch with individuals like this, because we're encouraging all of our members to come there and develop profiles of which you can reach out to 24/7.
That's
See
wonderful.
there, and that's the brilliance, that I was talking about. I always tell people I get credit for being on the camera or having my name out in the front, but I'm the expert at one thing, and that's finding the experts. And that's it. To further talk to the point Kyron was making before we come to a close for this particular panel, when you think about Clubhouse, Twitter, Facebook, there is a place right here. I see Don Rico Colden chiming in. He's another founding member of the coalition, bringing in that social determinants of health perspective to the coalition. Shout out to Don Rico Colden. When we're talking about these multimedia platforms, he has basically brought it in, and this is a comprehensive platform called Pro Rank Academy, and basically is minority businesses, black businesses. So when they say we would love to do business with you, but we just can't find any. We would love to do business with you and help you have access and help you help yourselves, but we just didn't know you were out there. Well, guess what? Pro Rank Academy is out here. Founding member of the Pennsylvania Diversity Coalition. Shameless plug again. But with that being said, I'd like to start from Mr. Robinson. We go to, isn't that funny? We have both of Mr. Robinsons on our screen. So we'll go from the younger Mr. Robinson that's at the bottom of the screen to the older Mr. Robinson second. And we'll continue up till we get to Judge Morris. If you can bring your closing comments. You know what we got to do.
What's that?
Get y'all off. We got to get out of the way for the real panel. The sisters are next.
My comment will be quick. This was excellent forum, and to that notion of working together and recognizing that nobody is going to achieve anything by themselves, and we've got to work together. There's an expression, and I don't know if I might have heard Royce use this in a speech. I don't know, so it's kind of trite. Maybe you've heard it before, but it simply says this. Even if you see a turtle sitting on top of a fence post, you can be assured it didn't get there by itself.
Only him. You got it. The elder Mr. Robinson, if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Exactly. I'll be brief too. I would just say to everybody, to all of our people, look inward. You're more powerful than you know. You're magical. You're powerful. And people capitalize on that power, on that and that magic every day. And the minute we learn how to capitalize on that power and that magic for ourselves, we're going to change the situation. So that's my closing remarks there.
Next.
All right, Mr.
Yes.
Tillman.
Sure. So I heard a quote once that said, if you want to go fast, if you want to go fast, go alone.
That's
if
right.
you want to go far, go together.
Amen.
So if we think about generational wealth, we need to go together. It was already touched on that the PABC provides that opportunity to go together. So I would just echo those comments. And one thing that was just helpful for me, I'll leave as a resource, as it helped change my mindset for buying by the block, etc. A book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, another book, The Richest Man in Babylon. So just want to leave those resources that were helpful for me, can be helpful for someone else.
Good. Definitely. Mr. Castile.
My final thing would be is to make a plan, because my motto has always been, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So
Amen.
I believe if we all plan, everyone start planning out how we can work together and when we can start working together, I believe we can go a lot further.
Perfect. Great. Exactly. Mr. Hudson.
Yes. First of all, let me thank Karl and Charlotte for pulling this together. I think it was great being on the panel with all of these good brothers. Also, I would say, for me, now is an opportunity. We have a great opportunity to work together here. These opportunities come and go, but as I always said, for me, the glass is always half full. Take advantage of the resources, the networking, and the people around you, because we have experience to help you navigate some of these things. But last but not least, I said, don't let anyone stop your dreams. So keep moving forward and let's get going. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. DeFore.
Okay, mine's is really brief, and that is, don't let others, don't let anybody else define who you are. Thank you.
Oh man. I would say close an argument, but my good brother is no longer of counsel. The Honorable Judge Morris.
I hung that up. First, I just want to say thank you to Karl and to Charla. And look, this panel is brothers who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And I think what it shows is that we're all where we are because we bought into the fact that we couldn't do it on our own. And we allowed people into our space and we gave them an opportunity to help us grow into who we are today. And hopefully when we leave this conversation, we'll take that with us and we'll begin to work together with other people, young people who need our guidance and need our support so that we build a legacy for the future. So I'm hopeful, I'm thankful, I'm blessed, I'm overwhelmed by the opportunities that we have based on what the good Lord has blessed us with to sow back into his kingdom, as they say. So I'm thankful for this opportunity. God bless everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. We lost Mr. Baldwin for a minute, so we want to bring him back in so he can give his final thoughts.
So my closing comment is simply this: you can't lead where you don't go, and trust God.
Mm-hmm. All right now.
Amen.
I ain't gonna just come back in
Just
and
come
drop
back
the
in and
mic.
slam it,
Just
right?
come in.
Everything.
Now I'm here. Ron was here. Now and I'm going. I'm like, dang, he just comes back in.
But what I would like to do is I'd like to thank all. One thing that I always continuously say that there is a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience in the Harrisburg community that goes untapped. And I'm just thankful that I've had the opportunity over the years, the many years of working in the community and communities around the state, to have had you all at the table and know that I can call upon you for whatever guidance or information or whatever is needed to try to get us to the next level, and depending on what we were working on. But I'm thankful too, Karl, for this opportunity. This podcast is something that has been needed in our community for a long time. So whoever the brain children were of this one here,
The guys outside the room.
yeah, the guys outside the room, this is wonderful. And it's encouraging. I think that for those who are able to tune in and hear, it gives them hope, it gives them inspiration, and it certainly gives them some people that they know that they can call to get whatever they need to help them be successful. So again, I want to thank you, and
Definitely.
everybody enjoy the MLK Day, and thank you for your service, not only today, but throughout your lives and your careers.
So again, that is Music Man Studios, Music Man Multimedia Studio, Craig, the Lewis brothers, Craig and Conrad, and then Chad Scott from the District Bar and Lounge. Before we go on our way out, before we move to our next panel, I like to play a little something that oftentimes encourages me when we talk about Dr. King and the I Have a Dream speech. But we touched on today that he was an economic impact guy as well.
Right.
At the same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents, further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
And I'll close out this podcast segment on that. The Pennsylvania Diversity Coalition, a seat at the table, the Lewis brothers, Music Man, all of those involved. Understand this. We have a voice. We have influence. We clearly understand the need to network, and we're coming to get our check. Thank you for joining us. We're here. We're available. See you on the next side with the ladies.
Yes.
For that panel. Can't wait.
What?